So now that we're 2 weeks into free agency, today I wanted to look at some of the remaining free agents in this free agent pool that the Green Bay Packers could end up signing to help their football team, as there still are a lot of holes on this team. I feel like the Packers could add veterans at wide receiver, tight end, edge, and still even safety, although they already did sign one safety in Tarvarius Moore. And although I see this as kind of a reset year for Green Bay, I do believe they're going to take on all of Aaron Rodgers' contract pre-June 1st, which would make him a $40 million cap hit against the Packers' salary cap this year, with him not even being on the team. So you're kind of going to have this year as a reset year to kind of get rid of that money. His contract will go away for future years. So the Packers are clearing a lot of salary cap room, and they still have a decent amount of space, but a lot of that is to try to get rid of that Aaron Rodgers contract. So I don't think they're necessarily going to be going out here signing a bunch of veteran free agents, but like I said, there are spots on this football team, and there are some free agents that are still left that I think could help for this year. The Green Bay Packers are set to have one of the youngest wide receiver rooms in the NFL going into a year with a brand new quarterback. So not that I'm saying Jordan Love is going to have an awful year by any means, but it would be a good idea to add a veteran into that room. Matt LaFleur himself said that he wanted to add a veteran into this young wide receiver room. So with that being said, let's start with the wide receiver position. There are a couple guys that I could maybe see, fitting into this Green Bay system and being a veteran wide receiver ad for this upcoming season. So first on the list, we have wide receiver Sammy Watkins. I'm just messing with you guys. Obviously not Sammy Watkins. That was a complete failure last year. The first receiver on this list I have is Marvin Jones, most recently with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, although Marvin Jones did just turn 33 years old just a couple weeks ago, I think he would be a nice veteran add into this wide receiver room, could supplement right at outside wide receiver for Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs when any of those two need a breather. Would be a nice, locker room presence for these young wide receivers. This dude has been in the league a long time on the Bengals, the Lions, and most recently for the last 2 years, the Jaguars. And he's actually been a pretty consistent wide receiver over his career. If we bring up his stats here, we see he was a Bengal for 3 years where he topped 800 yards twice. Then in Detroit, he topped 1,000 yards twice. Then in Jacksonville in 2021, he had 832 yards. And last year, most recently, 579 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's not going to come out here and give you another 1,000 yard, season from a wide receiver, a 33-year-old wide receiver, but that's really not what you're going to be asking of him. And like Matt LaFleur said, I do think they need to add a veteran, and I think Marvin Jones would be a great start. Like I said, just be a mentor in that locker room and still likely put up a 500-plus yard season and be a nice target for Jordan Love in certain situations. And him being 33 years old and likely in the last year or two of his NFL career, it wouldn't be that much to sign him, in my opinion, just slightly over the veteran minimum, maybe a couple $1 million. So for the second receiver on this list, I only have two because, like I said, this pool is really, really slim right now. I have Kenny Golladay, and I know a lot of people are going to be, oh God, Kenny Golladay, right? I mean, had an awful 2 years in New York and just an awful signing in general. That last year in Detroit with his back issue, the Giants still signed him to a ridiculous deal at the time, and he did absolutely nothing in New York. But he had such high expectations. And I think if you don't give him high expectations and maybe sign him to a veteran minimum deal, I mean, what's the risk there? What if you get a 700-yard Kenny Golladay season again? You don't really know. And if a new system, a new quarterback may produce that, we've seen that with players around the league. I mean, look at Rasul Douglas. This dude is on the practice squad of multiple teams and never really started, comes to Green Bay, has the best year of his career, and now is a starting player for the Green Bay Packers for now what's going to be the third year. So I'm not saying Kenny Golladay would come in and be a 1,000-yard wide receiver again like he was in Detroit, because I don't think that's ever going to happen again, but I feel like he could do something in the right situation. Bringing up his stats here, like I said, I don't see him getting anywhere near 2018, 2019 prime Kenny Golladay at 1,000 yards in 2018 and almost 1,200 yards in 2019. Then we see in 2020 where he had his back injury, only 338 yards there. In 2021, signed with the Giants, 521 yards, no touchdowns. Last year, even worse, 81 yards and 1 touchdown. His only touchdown as a New York Giant. Just an absolute awful stint with the New York Giants. Probably one of the worst signings in the most recent years that I can remember. But like I said, if you go into this with not crazy high expectations, I think it would be a low risk, high reward type player. And he's a veteran wide receiver. He's obviously been in the league for a while, so he can coach younger wide receivers. And who knows, maybe going into a new system, like I said, with Matt LaFleur, how he's going to run his offense now with Jordan Love, a very systematic offense, maybe he does better. Maybe he could flourish in that system. So, like I said, it would be a cheap wide receiver. The Packers need to add a veteran wide receiver. It's a very slim pool. Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, those are my two options. And speaking of slim pools, tight end is even slimmer. I mean, the Packers probably have the worst tight end room right now in the NFL just due to that it's literally just Josiah DeGuara, and nothing against Josiah DeGuara. I do think he's going to have a decent year, and I do believe in him, but that's really all they have, at least with players with actual NFL snaps in their history. So the free agent pool really has no one, and I think we're going to see the Packers draft a tight end early. Maybe it's a Darnell Washington, a Sam Laporta, a Luke Musgrave, Dalton Kincaid. Who knows who it may be, but I still think they should add a free agent, just a veteran guy, to that tight end room now that they lost Robert Tonyan, and likely Mercedes Lewis will be signing with the Jets once Aaron Rodgers is there. And for that player, I have Cameron Brate, who was just released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was set to be in the final year of his contract, but they did just release him. I believe this would be a pretty good veteran add at tight end. It's not going to be a guy you're giving all your snaps to, or he's gonna, light up the stat sheet with 8 receptions, 111 yards in a game. That's definitely not gonna happen, but I think he's a good veteran tight end who can block. He can be a threat in the red zone when you run 2 tight end sets, even 3 tight end set, and could mentor younger tight ends such as Josiah DeGuara and likely 2 tight ends that the Packers end up drafting. Bringing up his stats over his career, he's been a Tampa Bay Buccaneer his whole career since 2014. We see his highlights in 2016, 660 yards, 8 touchdowns, had nearly 600 yards the following year with another 6 touchdowns. He had another 6 touchdowns the year after that. Most recently, in 2021, 283 yards, 4 touchdowns, and last year, 182 yards and 1 touchdown. But the last 2 years, it was like a really crowded room at tight end with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so he didn't really get that many snaps. But the Packers, like I said, have a very, very, very weak tight end room right now, only like 1 player in there. So I think adding Cameron Brate, I think would be a decent signing, and I don't think it would be expensive. And that's kind of my thing with all of these free agents. A lot of them are veterans. They're not young players they're going to sign to multi-year deals. They're more so veterans to maybe help this football team transition into a Jordan Love era. And if you go into this with all young players and not much depth at positions, you're not really setting Jordan Love up to succeed. So I do think you need to add a veteran at wide receiver, tight end, maybe even an offensive lineman for this upcoming year. And I think Cameron Brate would be a good start, as well, like I said, drafting a couple guys in this draft at tight end. So I just wanted to sneak this in as the last thing on offense. Potential quarterback for a backup for Jordan Love. The Packers are obviously going to have to address backup quarterback now that Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing on the Jets and Jordan Love is no longer the backup quarterback. They need a guy in there. And the player I actually have my eyes on is Teddy Bridgewater. I know a lot of people are saying Matt Ryan, and if it was like near a veteran minimum, yeah, sure. But I think Teddy Bridgewater would just fit a little bit better in what the Packers are trying to do. And would be a nice veteran backup quarterback for Jordan Love in case he gets hurt a game or something of that sort. And Teddy Bridgewater has a ton of experience being a backup. Last year in Miami, had to come in a couple times, but then got hurt himself. Didn't have that great of a year. 49 completions on 79 attempts, 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. But the previous year in Denver, although that was not a good year for the Broncos in general, he didn't play that bad, actually. He had 285 completions for 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. So like I said, if you can bring in Teddy Bridgewater for like a 1-year, $3 to $4 million deal just to go in and help in that quarterback room and be the backup, which I'm sure he's okay with. I mean, he's done it so much in his career. They could sign Teddy Bridgewater and then also draft a guy in the later rounds. I do see the Packers drafting a quarterback in the later rounds. I don't see them drafting one too high, although we have been surprised before, but I think bringing in someone like Teddy Bridgewater would really help. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I want to go and look into the edge room, and I have 2 players that are current free agents. There's actually a lot of decent players right now for edge in the free agent pool, and one of which is Leonard Floyd, who was actually just released halfway through his 4-year, $64 million contract with the LA Rams. I'm not sure how much Leonard Floyd would cost right now. Obviously, I don't think it would be that amount, but I don't think it would be crazy cheap. But I think it would really help this edge room that is kind of needing a veteran ad right now. And that's honestly a lot of these positions. They need a veteran ad, and edge is definitely one of them. That position overall just needs a couple more guys, whether that's from early in the draft and then also adding a free agent like Leonard Floyd, because we don't really know when Rashawn Gary's going to return. I don't think it'll be week 1. I'll be surprised if it's week 1. I'll love it if it's week 1. I just don't think that will happen. They also have Preston Smith and Kingsley Enagbare, and they did just re-sign Justin Hollins, but I still think you got to add someone like Leonard Floyd into this room to really, seal up that edge room and then draft a guy early as well, maybe in the first 3 rounds. And I think Leonard Floyd still has a lot left in the tank, and I think the only reason he was released by the Rams was his salary cap. We see in 2022, he had 54 total pressures and 9 sacks. The year before that, in 2021, 73 pressures, 14 sacks, and in 2020, 55 pressures and 13 sacks. I mean, this guy is a starting caliber edge player. You could put him right next to Preston Smith, and then when Rashawn Gary comes back, you have a trio and even maybe 4 or 5 guys with Kingsley Enagbare and a potential draft pick that creates a really, deadly group to rush the passer. And out of all these guys I've listed so far, this is the one guy you probably would sign to a multi-year extension, maybe a 2 to 3 year extension. He is 30 years old, going to turn 31 years old by the season start. But like I said, I still think he has a lot left in the tank, probably at least 2 more years left. And I don't know how much he would cost. He was recently with the Rams at $16 million per year. Like I said, I don't see it like that at all, but I could see Leonard Floyd, netting over $10 million per year. So the Packers don't necessarily have that money right now, but if they want to add like another true starter into the edge room, I think it should be Leonard Floyd. So the next player on this list, pretty much same thing, a true starter in the edge room who just got released in the middle of his contract, and that is Frank Clark, most recently of the Kansas City Chiefs. So again, I don't think he's going to cost anywhere where his old contract was, which was at, $15 million per year, but he likely will be right around that $10 million per year mark. So this goes the same as Leonard Floyd. There's not much difference here, although Leonard Floyd, I think, is a better player here. So I think Frank Clark would be kind of like the cheaper option of the two if the Packers were to add someone. Bringing up his stats here last year, 56 total pressures, 9 sacks. The year before that, 53 pressures, 5 sacks. And the year before that, 49 pressures and 9 sacks. He's about to turn 30 years old himself, and just like Leonard Floyd, I think he does have a lot left in the tank and would also be a multi-year signing. I think these two are kind of long shots just because I don't know if the Green Bay Packers are going to go out and sign a $10 million per year defender in free agency, but if they were to do it, I think they should do it in the edge position and really just add someone, a real nice piece there, a veteran ad, someone who can easily go in, start right away, in lieu of Rashawn Gary, who, like I said, we don't know when's going to return. The last player on this list is a defensive lineman, as the Packers have now lost Dean Lowry to the Minnesota Vikings and Jerron Reed to the Seattle Seahawks. So the Packers lost a defensive lineman to the Seahawks, so why not go sign one of their free agents, Shelby Harris, defensive lineman? If we remember, Shelby Harris was part of that Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos trade where they sent back Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, and a bunch of picks. The Seahawks did just release Shelby Harris 2 weeks ago. He was set to be in the last year of his contract in 2023. And I think this also is a salary cap move because I think Shelby Harris is still a really solid defensive lineman and I think would fit right in to the Packers scheme on defense here. If we look at his stats in 2022, after being traded to the Seattle Seahawks, had 30 pressures, 2 sacks, 33 tackles, and 24 stops. The year before that, 7 sacks on 32 pressures. He's been a very, very solid defensive lineman over his career here. We see he was with Las Vegas in 2014 and 2015, and then Denver up until 2022. He was graded pretty well last year, a 74.8 defensive grade and a 78.5 run defense grade. We see his best year just 2 years ago, an 88.3 grade in 2020, and then 2018, a 90.0 grade. He's been one of the better defensive linemen in the league for the last, 5 to 6 years. He is about to turn 32 years old, but just like the other positions in this video today, the Packers, I think, need to add a veteran into the defensive lineman room now that Dean Lowry and Jerron Reed are gone. I believe in Devontae Wyatt. I believe in TJ Slayton. And obviously, we have Kenny Clark still. But that's only 3 guys, and I think the depth is very lacking right now in that defensive lineman group. I do believe they'll draft a guy as well, but just like all the other positions, I do think they need to sign a veteran to that group. And as of right now, I think Shelby Harris is that best fit out of all the defensive linemen in the free agency. All right, so that about does it for this video. I do believe the Packers are still going to go out and sign a couple free agents because, like I said earlier, Matt LaFleur already said he wants to add a veteran into the wide receiver room, and I think there's a lot of other positions that could use the same treatment. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Out of these free agents, which one would you like to see the Packers sign the most? But I appreciate everyone watching. If you could leave a like down below, it supports my channel a ton, and also click the subscribe button if you are a new viewer here. But I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.